Truth is, we need each other. God created us for each other, and when we commit to each other, powerful things happen.
But what we can do is we can get to know God. We can get to know his character and what he's like. And we can see how God plans to bring about good in us and through us. So as we keep our focus on him, he's able to lead us into healthy and healing relationships. He's able to give us meaning and purpose in our life. He's able to remind us that we belong, that we matter, and that we are above all else loved. Well, what's up, Revolution? It is good to be with you tonight. I am excited to be here because tonight we are jumping into a brand new teaching series called On the Run. And in this series, we are going to be walking through the book of Jonah, which is in the Old Testament of the Bible. It's a fascinating book. I'm excited to jump into it for the next 4 weeks. But tonight, as we get started, I thought that we would open up with a question that I think the book of Jonah forces us to ask ourselves. And that question is this: have you ever run away from something you knew you were supposed to do? I'm sure all of us could say yes to this question. I know that I certainly could. I'm what you would call a chronic avoider. I avoid stuff all the time. I avoid stuff so often that I begin to kind of enjoy avoiding it. I didn't go to the dentist for 5 years, and I felt great about it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I felt awesome about it. Not only that, but I hardly ever respond to text messages. I just don't respond to them. So much so that I had to turn off that notification that lets the other person know that I've read the text but haven't actually responded to it. It was beginning to cause problems in my marriage and my meaningful relationships in my life. It was a big deal. Also, why does that notification exist? Apple, not cool, okay? I'm mad about it. But we all have problems avoiding things that we know that we should be doing. Because for many of us, when we're faced with those situations, we all of a sudden become very good at coming up with every reason why we don't want to do that thing. It's either we have no interest in doing that thing, or, if we were to follow through, it would take work, and it would be difficult. And who's got time for that, right? See, the reason I want us to think about this question tonight is because I think that this question shouts out loud from the first chapter of Jonah. So let's pick up the story. Before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about Jonah. So Jonah was a prophet of God, which meant that it was his job to listen to God, to receive a message from God, and then to go to whoever God told him to, and to speak that message to them. It's a really straightforward job description. But the problem in the first chapter of Jonah was that God was calling Jonah to go to a place, in fact, to go to a nation and to bring a message to this nation, but Jonah didn't really like them very much. So let's pick up the story. This is how it starts. The Lord gave this message to Jonah: "Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Announce my judgment against it, because I have seen how wicked its people are." So, before we go any further, we got to talk a little bit about this place called Nineveh, okay? Because Nineveh had a big reputation, a reputation that Jonah would have known about back in his day. Because Nineveh was known for being absolutely terrible. It was the capital city of the Assyrian Empire, and the Assyrians were known for going to the known world, conquering them, and forcing everyone into slavery or forced obedience. They were bad dudes. If you're having trouble imagining this, think of those army-looking dudes from Star Wars with the white stormtroopers. Think of stormtroopers, lots of them, a whole nation of them, and they're bad, but 5,000 years ago, okay? Think that. That's the Assyrian Empire. And at the center of all of the corruption is the great city of Nineveh. And this reputation for terribleness was not lost on God. And so God was ready to do something about it. So he was going to send his prophet Jonah with a message, or at least he tried to, because when Jonah found out that he was supposed to go to Nineveh with a message from God for those terrible people, he decided to go on the run. Let's look at what happens next. But Jonah, after hearing this, got up, went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord. He went down to the port of Joppa, where he found a ship leaving for Tarshish. He bought a ticket and went on board, hoping to escape from the Lord by sailing to Tarshish. So I get like wanting to run away from your responsibilities. Like I get wanting to skip out on homework, but this dude was ready to run away from God. Like that's another level of avoidance that I don't have any idea about, all right? And not only that, not only was he going to run away from God, I think that he knew that he had to do it big. He had to run to the other side of the known world. So to prove my point, I have this map for you. I want to show you this map. So right here in the center, that's Joppa. That's where Jonah was. And then 500 miles to the east, that's Nineveh, where he was supposed to go. But instead, he decided to go 3,000 miles in the other direction to Tarshish. And the only thing there was, I don't know, not God apparently, because that's where he was running to. And if I'm honest, at this point in the story of Jonah, most of the time we're like, man, Jonah, you're so dumb. Like, why are you running to the other side of the world? Like, you're just being a fool right now. But I think if we're honest for a second, we can see ourselves in Jonah a little bit. We can relate a little bit to Jonah. I know that I can. Because like I said, I'm a chronic avoider. And as I was thinking about this message and putting something together for it, I was reminded of a story in my past that I'm not going to lie, am not super pumped to share with you right now because it's really embarrassing. So I need a lot of grace. This is a safe place for me right now, okay? But I'm going to tell you the story of a time that I neglected to do something I was supposed to do and how it came back to bite me. So back in high school, I went to a really small high school. I graduated with about 90 students in my class. And I actually loved going to a small school. I knew everyone in the school, and they all knew me, and that felt really good. And not only that, but we had like some perks of being a part of a smaller school. But one of the best ones was what we did for our senior prom. So every year for our senior prom, a local car dealership would donate a car to a lucky senior, a free car, okay? And so they would put all of the seniors' name in this big raffle, and they would make a big deal about it, and after prom was over, they would draw a name. And you guys, my senior year, I won a car. I won a car. Oh, you're clapping. You can clap. Please clap for me. This is great. By the way, this story is about to take a really harsh turn, okay, just so everyone knows. But I won a free car at prom. So once prom was over, I was invited to the dealership to come and check out the car. And once I was there, a bunch of these guys came out to like give me the ins and outs of the car. They were like, here's what you need to know in order to keep this car running smoothly. And they were like, you got to make sure that you change the tires like every 4 years. And you got to rotate the tires regularly. And you certainly have to change the oil on a regular basis. Now, I didn't tell you what car this was. This was a Dodge Stratus RT. If you don't know what RT stands for, it stands for Racing Technology. That's right. It's basically driving a race car around in high school, okay? It's awesome. But because it was like racing technology and it was like big important, something about the engine, the dudes were like, make sure you change the oil regularly. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm awesome. I want a free car. Get out of my face. I'm ready to go, okay? So they give me the keys and I drive off the lot. And you guys, I'm just feeling like an absolute king. And then for the next year, I didn't do a single thing that they told me to do to take care of this car. Didn't rotate the tires, and I never changed the oil in the car. Now, all of the car guys just immediately lost respect for me, which you should, absolutely, okay? I'm embarrassed by this story, but it gets even worse. So about a year later, some of my friends were like, hey, let's take a road trip to Tennessee, which I felt great about, you know? We lived in Ohio at the time. Some of my friends moved to Tennessee. We were gonna go and visit them. So I was like, let's take my car. It'd be super awesome. So we get in the car, and we head out of Ohio. We get into Kentucky, in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and all of a sudden, my car just begins to like, just like shakes. The steering wheel's going back and forth, and then smoke pours out from underneath the hood. So I pull off to the side of the road. We all get out of the car and like run away from it, and then I'm not joking, flames start coming out from underneath the hood. I was watching my car burn on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. That's a bad day right there. So thankfully, the flames died down. The car didn't explode and we didn't die. But my car was toast. My beautiful brand new race car was toast. So I had to walk with my friends to the next gas station and call our moms to pick us up, like a bunch of noobs. So that's the story. Forgive me. But the reason I tell you that story is the same reason why we're walking through the first chapter of Jonah tonight. Stories like these remind us, they show us what our lives look like when we run away from the things that we are supposed to be doing. You see, because while it might work out for a little while, right? I had an entire year of just bliss driving my car around. Eventually, it comes back to get us. See, I think we could sum up what that life looks like, a life running away from the things that we know that we're supposed to do, the things that are right, the things that God is calling us to do, by saying this, that our disaster follows our disobedience. That disaster follows disobedience, because the reality is, whenever we're running away from something we know we should be doing, we're living in disobedience, whether it's to our parents or our teachers or the guys at the car dealership or even God himself. And when we live that way, like I said, we might be able to get away with it for a little while, but eventually disaster will strike. So what I want to do now for the rest of our time together is I want to look at Jonah in Jonah chapter 1. And I want to use him as an example of how not to live, because when God came to Jonah, Jonah ran in the opposite direction. I want to talk about how we here at Revolution can live our lives on the run towards what is right and good and what God is calling us to do. So the first lesson that I think we can learn from Jonah is the importance of learning how to wake up. We have got to wake up. When disaster is coming in all around us, we've got to learn how to wake up to that disaster. So going back to the story of Jonah, Jonah decides to live in disobedience, to run away from God and what God was calling him to do. He jumps on a boat that's headed in the opposite direction, and God responds, and he sends a massive storm after Jonah, which is basically like the ancient equivalent of your car catching on fire, I think. I'm not sure, but so this big storm happens, and it's tossing the boat from left to right, and it's threatening to tear the boat apart. So all of the sailors are rightfully like freaking out. They're losing their minds. They're throwing cargo overboard. They're calling out to all of their various gods. And in the midst of all of the chaos, they look around, and Jonah is nowhere to be found. Can't find him anywhere. So let's find out where Jonah went. Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us, and we will not die." So let's recap. The boat is about to capsize. Sailors are freaking out. They're throwing stuff overboard. They are calling out to all of their different gods. And so the captain comes to Jonah, the guy who's supposed to be representing the one true God, in order to wake him up and remind him to, represent the God he was supposed to be representing. This is not a good look for Jonah right now, because while the storm was raging in his life, he was hiding. He was nowhere to be found. But let's think for a second about what Jonah was doing here. Jonah had made a decision to live in disobedience to what God was calling him to do. And his response to that disobedience was to hide. It was to hibernate. It was to sleep away the storm that was going on outside. And I wonder, if we were to be honest with ourselves, how many of us do this very same thing? When the storms in our life are raging outside, how many of us just want to fall asleep? I remember when I was in high school and I would come up against something stressful or something kind of overwhelming, whether it was school or relationships or whatever. I would literally go to sleep. I would go into my room, I would shut the door, I would block out the sun, and I remember thinking to myself, if I can just sleep long enough, maybe the trouble will be gone by the time I wake up. But it never was. It was never gone. And some of you are the same way. Some of you escape to your room or you escape somewhere else, and you think, maybe if I just numb myself to what's going on outside, that it'll just take care of itself. But see, sometimes what we need to do is we need to lose a little bit of sleep in order to spend time with God. Or we need to lose a little bit of sleep in order to mend our relationships. Or we need to lose a little bit of sleep in order to do something about the disasters that are swirling around our lives. Another place that we might go is you're overwhelmed, you're stressed out, and so you run to Netflix, right? How many times have we been overwhelmed at school or with something else, and we just all of a sudden have this desire to rewatch Stranger Things from the very beginning, both seasons, right away. It's immediate. We have to do it. And see, here's the thing. Going to sleep and Netflix, they're not bad in and of themselves. But the moment those activities become places for hiding, places that we numb ourselves from the reality outside, we're in danger. We're in danger of walking right into our disasters. And we need to learn in order to get over those to wake up. Because I think most of the time when we think about the storms in our lives, we think, yeah, we should hide from those. Those are bad. But what if the storms in our life are sent so that God can wake us up? What if God sent a storm into Jonah's life in order to say, Jonah, you're going the wrong way. Turn around. I need you back over here. This is where I'm calling you. You're headed in the wrong direction. I think if we were able to change our perspective on the storms of our life and realize that they're meant for something for us, for the life that God is calling us into, we might easier wake up. See, I had a friend in college who saw the disaster of the decisions and the disobedience in his life on the horizon, and he decided to do something about it. See, he was in love with this girl. It was a girl that he knew that he was going to marry, and he really cared about her. But he had a thing on the side. He was deeply addicted to pornography. See, he realized anytime that life got stressful, he could just hide away. He could just go there. When things got stressful in his relationship with his girlfriend, instead of like working it out, he would just escape. He would leave. He would numb himself. And so it got to the point where it was becoming a rift between him and his girlfriend. And so finally she confronted him and she said to him, I feel like I don't know who you are anymore. And later my friend told me that when she said that, he woke up. He realized that he was about to lose a relationship that he really cared about. And that if he didn't act now, that it could be lost forever. And so that next week he came to me and some of our other friends and he asked us to come alongside of him, to help him figure out new habits and new pathways and new rhythms for him to get out of this addiction. He asked us to pray with him on a regular basis, which of course we did because we cared about him and we wanted him to be set free. And not only that, he went to his girlfriend and told her the truth, which was of course difficult and confusing. It definitely awkward, but she listened, she forgave him, and eventually they got married. And that's great. But the reason I tell you that story was this guy was using pornography in his life the same way Jonah was sleeping at the bottom of a boat. Both of them had storms swirling and growing around them. And they were each trying to numb themselves to that reality. See, sometimes when the storm is raging in your life, you need to pause and ask yourself the question, is there an area of disobedience that is causing the disaster that I see? And if there is, then the first step for you is to wake up to it. To no longer believe the lie that you could just sleep it away and it'll just take care of itself, but to realize that you could do something about it. And that you can wake up to the reality of what God is calling you into. So the first lesson that we can learn from Jonah is to learn the value of waking up to the disasters in our life. And the second lesson that we can learn from Jonah tonight is this: learn how to resist the easy way out. So back to the story of Jonah. He made a decision. He was going to disobey God. He was going to run to the other side of the world. He catches a boat. The captain wakes him up in the middle of the storm. And the captain says to him, call on your God. Maybe if you call on your God, he'll listen to you and he'll save us. So let's look at what Jonah does. He says this, throw me into the sea and it will become calm again. I know that this terrible storm is all my fault. Now listen, notice what Jonah doesn't do here. He doesn't pray. He does not call out to his God. Instead, he just says, man, this storm's too big for me. I'm just going to give up. Throw me overboard. See, I think Jonah was believing a lie that we so often believe too, which is that when our disaster that's caused by our disobedience catches up with us, that there's some magical, easy way out. That we could just throw up our hands and give in and give up. And we do this all the time. I mean, we do it in big ways and in small ways. I mean, how many of you have heard of a friend, or maybe you are this friend, that were like, you know what, I don't need to study for the driver's test. I've been driving my whole life, okay? My parents drive me around all the time. I don't need to study for it. I'm just gonna cram and then take the test the next day and ace it. And you don't, okay? Or what about when your parents ask you to clean your room, right? And all of a sudden your closet becomes this like massive, easy way out, right? Where you just like bulldoze everything into the closet and like force the doors closed and like magic, boom, everything's perfect and clean and you love it. We're always constantly looking for easy way out. But here's the truth. When it comes to the disasters in your life, specifically the ones that are being caused by areas of disobedience, areas where you are running away from the things that you ought to be doing, man, there is never an easy way out there. It's going to require effort and work. And so what I think we need to do when those moments come our way, even before they come our way, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is my easy way out? What do I do? Where do I go when life becomes too overwhelming for me? Because some of us are like Jonah. Some of us, when it comes to our relationship with God, are like Jonah. It's like, you know what? Jesus is asking me to like give up my friend group. Or Jesus is asking me to pray on a regular basis. Or Jesus is asking me to be good and to give up these habits that I've kind of like found my identity in. And you know what? That's too hard. I don't know how to do that. I give up. Or some of us, it looks like laziness in our life. It looks like us not being willing to realize that we can do something about the disasters in our life and just trying to sleep through it. Trying to get through it any way that we can. And for some of us, it's believing that we can look good on the outside, come to church, say all the right things, but on the inside we're crumbling. Or when we're left alone, we're crumbling. But we're too proud to ask anyone for help. See, the truth is, the easy way out approach to life just doesn't work. It doesn't bring you into the life that you want or the life that God has for you. And so, what do we do about it? How do we resist the easy way out? Well, we can start by doing what Jonah didn't do. We can call out to God. You see, I love how the writer, David, the writer in the book of Psalms, he put together this beautiful prayer that he gave to God that gives me so much hope about when I'm lost and when I need to figure out how to turn the boat of my life around from the storm that's raging around me and call out to God. This is what he says right here. Hear my prayer, Lord. Listen to my cry for mercy. When I am in distress, I call to you because you answer me. Among the gods, there is none like you, Lord. No deeds can compare with yours. You see, when we call out to God, we can know that he's going to answer us. When we're faced by the storms in our life, we can reach out to him. And for some of us tonight, that's where you're at. Some of you have storms raging all around you right now. Some of you aren't sure how to deal with it. Some of you are ready to give up, especially when it comes to following after God. And so for some of you, man, you need to go to God tonight and ask for his forgiveness. You need to go to him and say, God, I am leading the boat of my life towards Tarshish. I am running as far away from you as I possibly can. And all I see around me is storms. I need you to rescue me. Some of you, man, you need guidance. You need to go to God and say, God, I'm not sure how to turn this boat around. Like, I'm not sure how to fix the problems in my life. All I see is disaster, and I'm not sure what to do about it. Will you help me? Will you guide me? Will you direct me? And some of us just need to ask God for courage and trust him to come through. See, here's the deal. When we come to God seeking his forgiveness, when we come to God seeking his guidance, when we come to God seeking courage, we will be met with acceptance. We will be met with his presence every time because God is way more interested, hear me on this, God is way more interested in helping us walk in obedience with him than he is in shaming us for living in disobedience. Way more interested. Looking for an easy way out of your disasters in life will keep you living in those disasters. But resisting them and calling out to God will lead you down the path of living your life on the run towards what is right and good and what God is calling you to do. So you guys, let's learn from Jonah. Let's learn from his example. Let's not be like him and live our lives in disobedience to the things that we know that we should be doing. Instead, let's wake up to the disasters that are on the horizon and let's do something about it. Let's resist the easy way out and let's call out to God with everything that we have in us. And let's live our lives on the run towards what God is calling us to do, what is right and what is good. All right, well, across all our campuses, let's pray together. Jesus, we love you. Help us, God. God, some of us need forgiveness. Some of us need courage. Some of us need guidance, Lord. I pray that you would be so close to us in this moment right now, and that you would inspire us to not be like Jonah, to turn the boats of our lives around and to go towards where you're calling us. Because even though it might be intimidating, even though it might be walking into a situation we don't know how to navigate, you will be with us and you will guide us. So Lord, with that, we trust you and we love you. In Christ's name, amen. Thanks, guys. See you next week.